Welcome back, folks, to the 30th night on Uncle Three's Ghost Story channel. You know, spirits come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes they appear as precise figures in a house. Other times they're just sorrowful cries, or they might hide away in old belongings left behind by those who came before us. Then, there are cases where people encounter the restless souls who couldn't find peace. And of course, they become ghosts. And when those ghosts are filled with hatred, bitterness, and grudges, they can transform into demons or evil spirits, and many other tales besides. Now, whether you believe in them or not, that's been a debate for centuries, even for thousands of years. Some folks go their whole lives without ever seeing a ghost, while others encounter them without even realizing it. Tonight's story from Uncle Three happened almost 100 years ago and was recounted by a Chinese friend named Wei. Due to sensitive political reasons, I can't reveal the exact location or time, but it's a tale Wei's grandmother told her back in the day. You see, back then, Wei's grandmother had to migrate, which means she was fleeing from war and famine. Life was so tough in their homeland that her grandparents had to carry their 2 children, one of them being Wei's mother, and set out to find a new place to live. During their desperate escape, they stopped in Fujian province. Today, Fujian is a bustling place, full of industrial zones and shopping malls. But way back when, it was incredibly desolate. Beyond the forests and wilderness, there was nothing to sustain life. Living there was truly difficult. But Wei's grandparents, exhausted from the journey through so many different regions, provinces, and districts, decided to stop right there in Fujian. It wasn't fertile land, just a temporary spot for them to rest after such a long trek. At that time, Wei's mother was just a baby, and only Wei's uncle, who was about 6 years old, had some awareness of their situation. They put up a makeshift shack to live in. Besides Wei's grandparents, other relatives who were also fleeing the war gathered there too. Why did they choose that particular spot? Because it was convenient. It was near a small river, and more importantly, it had an abandoned school. This school was ancient. No one knew precisely when it was built, but it was just a small, empty building, completely bare and treeless. What made it so vital was the source of clean water inside. That was the main reason these people settled temporarily around it. The clean water came from 3 wells, 2 close together, and 1 hidden behind the school. Though the school's facilities were old, the wooden furniture was still usable. So the settlers took apart the desks and chairs to use for their own temporary needs during those hard times of war and hunger. Life slowly began to take root there. People started fishing, raising chickens, pigs, and even cattle. Everyone deeply valued and respected the 3 wells, for they were the only source of water. And here's the unsettling thing. The water in these wells was obvious, crystal clear, nothing like the muddy river water. The locals were baffled. They searched for the primary source of the healthy water, but found nothing. They just knew the wells had been there forever, old but always providing clean water. Life went on quite normally for a while, as Wei's grandparents recalled, until one fateful day. In that area lived a homeless poor man who was often drunk, wandering from place to place. One night, stumbling home in a drunken haze, he couldn't make it back to his shack. He passed by the abandoned school and thought, "What's the difference where I sleep?" He'd been living there for months anyway. So he went inside and crashed on an old school desk, which was better than his shack on the edge of the forest. In the middle of the night, a terrible thirst woke him. He fumbled his way, still quite drunk, to one of the wells. Anyone who's been that drunk and thirsty at night will understand. He dropped his bucket, drew up some water, and downed it so that he vomited straight into the well. One of the 3 wells. He figured it would settle by morning, and afraid of being yelled at, he hurried back to his shack. The next morning, the settlers arrived at the wells, and to their horror, it wasn't just the well the homeless man had defiled that was dirty. All 3 wells were contaminated. This was terrifying because these wells served 20 households. The healthy water was murky yellow, like grease or cooking oil floating on the surface. People took turns scooping out the water, hoping to clear the filth, but no matter how much they scooped, the yellow color remained. Gradually, a terrible stench began to rise from the wells. At the same time, they discovered the homeless man was gravely ill. He'd come home, vomited, and then suffered from severe diarrhea and a high fever. His drinking buddies from the night before confirmed he'd been perfectly healthy, not sick or tired at all, just drinking normally. But now, suddenly, this. In his feverish delirium, the homeless man managed to tell everyone that he was the one who had vomited into the well. He wasn't a bad person. He was just negligent and drunk, inadvertently causing this disaster. The villagers advised him to move into the school to isolate himself, given that he was sick and the water source was also affected. They carried him inside. It wasn't a terrible place to be, and everyone now had to use their skills to fetch water from the nearby river and stream, filtering it and boiling it before drinking. The next morning, when people returned to check on the homeless man, he was on his deathbed. His chances of survival were slim. When they approached him, his very first words were chilling. He didn't ask for help, water, food, or utter any last wishes. Instead, he gasped, "This school has demons." About 2 hours later, he slipped into a coma and died. They decided to cremate his body, as cremation was the only way to ensure no bacteria remained, unlike burial, which posed a risk. After the cremation, they found a way to seal the mouths of all 3 wells. But once the wells were sealed, something truly unsettling began. Every single night, the people living nearby, especially Wei's grandparents, heard the mournful cries of a woman echoing from within the school. It was a wailing cry with an eerie echo. They also heard cats meowing like a baby crying. On the second night, the sounds changed. Children playing, running, and loudly slamming doors. Thump, thump, bang, bang. All these terrifying noises came from the school. They had lived there for months, and nothing like this had ever happened until the wells were sealed. On the third night, 2 more men who had been drinking with the deceased homeless man also fell ill. They suffered from vomiting, watery diarrhea, and fever, eventually dying. People began to realize this was a plague ghost, Madich-Ben. While a new concept for Westerners, it was common in Asia, particularly in Japan and China, and it was a type of ghost that brought pestilence and disease to others. No one understood why or how the homeless man's actions had caused such a plague ghost to appear. But night after night, they continued to hear the woman and children playing in the school. Slowly, the death toll in the area climbed. From 2, it went to 5, then to 10 people. Nearly half the households living there perished, and every night, many of those who were dying would say the exact same chilling words as the first homeless man. "This school has demons." Didn't that strike you as strange? They'd lived there for months with no incidents, and then this. In the days that followed, families who raised livestock, cows, pigs, or chickens, woke up to find their animals gutted, their insides torn out and eaten. When the villagers searched for what could have done this, they followed a trail of blood. The blood trail led them directly to the abandoned school, specifically to the first-floor hallway, where blood was splattered everywhere. The residents couldn't understand why the school had become so gruesome. Fear gripped them, and families slowly began to move away. Wei's grandparents, who were carrying her mother and uncle, fled south to Taiwan to start a new life. They've been settled in Taiwan ever since. Years later, no one knows if the school still stands in that region. But Wei's grandmother affirmed that when they left, all the other families also fled. Not a single household dared to remain. Much later, at a village gathering in Wei's neighborhood in Taiwan, people were chatting, and the conversation turned to ghost stories. Someone spoke of their own migration, how they traveled through many districts to reach Taiwan. That's when Wei's grandmother recounted her horrifying story. An older woman, about Wei's grandmother's age, who had arrived in Taiwan earlier and passed through the very Fujian region, then spoke. "I came to Taiwan before you, sister," she said. "I passed through that area, and I heard talk about that school." She said that a young woman, a teacher with a child, was shot to death there by enemy soldiers. She was raped and then killed right there. And the enemy soldier who committed the act later died of a plague-like illness, vomiting and suffering from diarrhea, right there at the same spot. As for the 3 wells, no one knew who had dug them. The older woman had heard that the school was once a prosperous place. She said that after the tragedy, it seemed other migrants, perhaps someone who knew how to perform charms or rituals, had placed a powerful charm in the 3 wells. This charm was why the water stayed so clear and pure. But when the homeless man vomited into the well, he defiled it, breaking the charm's power. That's when the evil spirits woke up and began to harm everyone around. Only such malevolent demons would eat raw meat, chickens, pigs, cows, and commit such killings. It couldn't have just happened naturally. To this day, Wei has returned to Fujian many times, trying to find the school and the 3 wells. But her grandmother couldn't specify the exact district. Back then, it was just wilderness and overgrown grass with no street names. Now, Fujian is a highly developed province, so it's impossible to know if the school or the people who once lived there can still be found. And that, my friends, concludes our 30th ghost story. We've learned about a new kind of ghost tonight. Join me again on the 31st night and make sure you're the only one in the room.